Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Foreign Office says India is posing a serious threat to regional peace and stability by procuring arms beyond its security needs. In a press briefing, the Foreign Office spokesman called on India to reverse steps aimed at changing the demography of occupied Kashmir. He said India has issued over 3 million fake domiciles to non-resident Kashmiris. In a move aimed at appeasing Hindu voters ahead of the elections, nearly 700 madrasas will be shut from the 1st of April in India's Assam state. The Education Department has said the madrasas will be converted into regular schools under the law which was passed last year in December. Activists and opposition parties say the measure is part of the right-wing government's anti-Muslim agenda. Eight more protesters have been killed by security forces in Myanmar's Myang town and Yangon city. More than 60 people have died in clashes with the security forces since the military seized power on February the 1st. Meanwhile, the military government has accused Aung San Suu Kyi of taking $600,000 and gold in bribe. Earlier, the US imposed sanctions on 2 children of Myanmar's military leader Min Aung Hlaing and their 6 companies. China's legislature has approved a resolution to overhaul Hong Kong's electoral system. The Patriots governing Hong Kong resolution will allow a pro-Beijing panel to vet and elect candidates. The legislation could be enacted in Hong Kong within the next few months. The Duke of Cambridge says the royals are not a racist family following accusations about the Duke and the Duchess of Sussex in a TV interview. Speaking in East London, Prince William said he has not yet spoken to his brother but will do so. Buckingham Palace previously said it was saddened to learn that a royal family member expressed concerns over the skin color of Meghan's unborn baby. In Brazil, the number of daily COVID-19 fatalities has hit a new high with 2,286 people dead overnight. Meanwhile, the US Congress has passed President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill. In Pakistan, more than 2,200 tested positive and 53 died overnight, with the death toll climbing over 13,300. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.6 million lives and infected over 117 million people so far. And in cricket, the Pakistan Cricket Board and the Pakistan Super League franchises are aiming to reschedule the remaining matches of the event in June in Karachi. The 6th edition of the mega event was postponed on the 4th of March due to the coronavirus cases inside the biosecure bubble. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Foreign Office says India is posing a serious threat to regional peace and stability by procuring arms beyond its security needs. In a press briefing, the Foreign Office spokesman called on India to reverse steps aimed at changing the demography of occupied Kashmir. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhary said India has issued over 3 million fake domiciles to non-resident Kashmiris, besides committing grave human rights violations. The spokesman said Pakistan condemns the continuing spree of extrajudicial killings, committed by Indian forces. Earlier, Indian troops martyred 2 more civilians in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Islamabad district. Hundreds of Kashmiris have been killed by Indian troops since New Delhi revoked the Indus Special status in August 2019. In a move aimed at appeasing Hindu voters ahead of the elections, nearly 700 madrasas will be shut down from the 1st of April in India's Assam state. The Education Department says the madrasas will be converted into regular schools under the law which was passed last year in December. Activists and opposition parties say the measure is part of the right-wing government's anti-Muslim agenda. The action has laid bare the Indian government's atrocities on minorities following last year's Hindu-Muslim rights and the revocation of occupied Jammu and Kashmir's special status in 2019. Last year, a report by the US Commission on International Religious Freedom categorized India as a country of particular concern over the treatment of minorities. International human rights activists have slammed India's xenophobic and supremacist ideology under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. At a webinar titled India for Elected Hindus Only, activists criticized New Delhi's inhuman treatment towards religious minorities.
Ali Yahya hosted the webinar that was held by Geneva Times. Speakers included United Kingdom parliamentarian Afzal Khan, London human rights activist Dr. Feroz, and human rights defender from Tunisia, Rahma bin Hamadi. They condemned BJP government's policies that seek to discriminate against religious minorities and against subcaste Hindus as well. The speakers also demanded India to arrest culprits of 11 Pakistani Hindus refugees murdered in the Jodhpur district of Rajasthan. The exhibition highlighted Indian atrocities in occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
British MPs say the UK Parliament has the right to criticise India's handling of the farmers' protest. This comes after India summoned the British High Commissioner over debates on farmers' protests in the UK Parliament.
In a statement, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Leila Moran, said what was discussed in Parliament was the power of democracy. She added the Indian government should have respect for the UK's democratic traditions. Earlier on Tuesday, the debate was called after more than 100,000 people had petitioned Parliament to discuss the protest. Liberal Democrat councillor Gurt Singh, who has Indian origin, had created the petition. In the 90-minute debate, British lawmakers criticised the reforms and urged Prime Minister to take up the issue at the G7 summit in June. Meanwhile, Indian farmers have called for a nationwide strike on the 26th of March to mark 4 months of agitation. Over 250 farmers have died during their agitation since November last year.
8 more protesters have been killed by the security forces in Myanmar's Myang town and Yangon city. More than 60 people have died in clashes with the security forces since the military seized power on February 1. The military government has also accused deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi of taking $600,000 and gold in bribe. Earlier, the US imposed sanctions on 2 children of Myanmar's military leader Min Aung Hlaing and their 6 companies. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has condemned the violence in Myanmar and called on the army to show restraint. But the Security Council stopped short of threatening possible further action. Turkey, Russia and Qatar say they are committed to advancing a UN-backed political process in Syria. In a joint statement after a meeting in Doha, the 3 foreign ministers called for facilitating safe and voluntary return of Syrian refugees. The trio also agreed to counter separatist efforts but ruled out holding joint patrols in Syria. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said Ankara will continue to defend Syria's territorial integrity. Qatar's Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Abdurrahman Al Thani emphasized the need to increase aid to all Syrians throughout the country. The 3 sides called on the World Health Organization to prioritize COVID-19 vaccination in Syria. The meeting comes a day after the 10th anniversary of the Syrian conflict, which has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for more humanitarian access to conflict-torn Syria. Guterres made the remarks in a press briefing at the UN headquarters to mark the 10th anniversary of the Syrian war. Guterres said even after a decade of conflict, the situation in Syria still remains a living nightmare. He said some 60% of the Syrians are at a risk of hunger this year. He said intensified cross-line and cross-border deliveries are essential to reach everyone in need everywhere. Guterres also pledged that the UN will continue its pursuit of a political settlement in Syria in line with the Security Council. Yemen's army says it has partially broken Houthis' 6-year-long siege of the southern city of Taiz. In an interview, a Yemeni military spokesperson said the army seized control of the several mountain locations on the western edges of the city. He said the forces have also been successful in reopening a road to the western areas on the Red Sea. Yemeni troops have recently launched a new offensive in Taiz and have broken months of military stalemate with the Houthis. Meanwhile, the Saudi-led Arab coalition says it has destroyed Houthis' missile launcher in an airstrike in Mari province. The coalition released a video footage showing the strike on SAM-6 missile launcher at a warehouse. The German, Egyptian and Jordanian foreign ministers met their French counterpart to discuss the Middle East peace process. Heiko Maas, Sameh Shoukry and Ayman Safadi will discuss the peace process involving Israel and Palestine with Yves Le Drian. This comes a week after the International Criminal Court announced it will open an investigation into war crimes in the Palestinian territories. Israel captured the West Bank along with East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip in the 1967 Middle East War, but Palestine demands that Israel remove its settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Israeli Defense Forces have arrested 5 Palestinian children in the West Bank. Israeli NGO B'Tselem says the children aged between 8 and 12 were rounded up near the Havat Maun outpost. The NGO said the army apprehended the children over accusations of attempts to steal parrots from the outpost. It said the settlers from a nearby farm called the army. The group said the Israeli forces have temporarily released the children and said that they will be interrogated later. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Washington will maintain its support for the Lebanese army under President Joe Biden's administration. Testifying in front of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Blinken also pledged support for the Lebanese educational institutions. Blinken also affirmed backing for the plans to continue support for the refugee camps that dominate Lebanon. Lebanon's interim interior minister has warned that the country's security forces are drained and unable to fulfill their duties. Meanwhile, the energy minister also said Lebanon faces a total power outage by this month's end if much needed funds are not approved. The financial meltdown and political deadlock in Lebanon have also prompted several protests throughout the country. Japan has urged Iran to adhere to the 2015 nuclear agreement. Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi said this in a phone call with his Iranian counterpart Javad Zarif. Japan's foreign ministry said Iran should adopt a constructive approach towards US President Joe Biden's initiative to revive the talks. It said Toshimitsu also expressed concerns over Iran halting snap inspections by the UN nuclear watchdog. He said Japan will continue its diplomatic efforts, drawing on an alliance with the US and a friendly relationship with Iran. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Tehran is ready to resume its commitments if other stakeholders start fulfilling theirs. China's legislature has approved a resolution to overhaul Hong Kong's electoral system. The legislation could be enacted in Hong Kong within the next few months. The Patriots Governing Hong Kong resolution will allow a pro-Beijing panel to vet and elect candidates. Following the vote, China's Prime Minister Li Keqiang said the resolution will ensure development of one country, two systems. The latest move follows a series of measures that have increased Beijing's grip on Hong Kong, including the passing of the national security law last year. The former British colony was handed back to China in 1997 under a model called One Country, Two Systems. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will meet with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on March the 18th in Alaska. The White House says the meeting will be an opportunity to address a wide range of issues, including deep disagreements. This will be the first high-level in-person contact between the two sparring countries under the Biden administration. During a congressional hearing, Blinken said the meeting is a chance to lay out U.S. concerns with Beijing in a frank manner.
This is an important opportunity for us to lay out in very frank terms the many concerns that we have with Beijing's actions and behavior that are challenging the security, the prosperity, and the values of the United States and our partners and allies. So we intend to raise, and we will raise, the host of issues, some of which have already been touched on today, that concern us.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Brazil, the number of daily COVID-19 fatalities has hit another new high, with 2,286 people dead overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.6 million lives and infected over 117 million people so far. More in this report.
After a full year since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic, the new coronavirus is still going strong, claiming thousands of lives every day. A new wave of COVID-19 is ripping through Brazil, pushing hospitals and ICUs toward collapse and claiming record numbers of daily deaths. In the U.S., although life has started to move towards some semblance of normalization in several states, health officials have warned of fresh surges as more infectious variants of the virus continue to spread. Meanwhile, both houses of the Democrat-dominated Congress fulfilled their campaign promise of the COVID-19 relief package.
We Democrats made promises, particularly we did in the Senate. We said if we won those 2 seats in Georgia, we would get things done. Mitch McConnell blocked bills 4 times in a row. And Mr. Ossoff and Mr. Warnock told the citizens of Georgia if they were elected, they would make sure that the actual promises made would be promises kept, and they have been. So this is a wonderful day for America.
In Europe, 5 states have suspended the use of AstraZeneca vaccine following 2 deaths in Austria, allowing EU's medicine agency to conduct an investigation. In Turkey, daily infections have risen to the highest level, 10 days after President Tayyip Erdogan announced an easing of measures to curb the pandemic. Meanwhile, Australia has unveiled $928 million tourism support package to boost local travel while international routes remain closed.
800,000 tickets to ride for Australians to go out and ensure that they can experience this amazing country. That's what this is about. To keep people in their jobs, we've got to put planes in the air and we've got to put tourists on the ground. The Australian tourism industry needs more tourists. They want to get on and run the businesses and welcome the tourists.
In Asia, South Korea is set to extend vaccinations for people aged 65 years and older with AstraZeneca's vaccine to ramp up its immunization drive. And over in Middle East, Palestine has registered highest single-day COVID-19 fatalities since the beginning of the pandemic.
COVID-19 has claimed 53 more lives in Pakistan overnight, raising the death toll to 13,277. The Health Ministry reported 2,258 new cases in the last 24 hours. The ministry said so far over 597,000 people have tested positive for the disease. It said more than 566,000 have recovered from COVID-19 so far. The ministry said there are over 17,000 active cases in the country. It added 1,688 patients are in critical condition. In Pakistan, the Gilgit-Skardu road has been blocked for all kinds of traffic following a massive landslide. Nearly 100 meters of road came under the landslide near the Chamachu site, prompting authorities to dispatch the personnel of the Frontier Works organization and necessary equipment to clear the debris. All stranded commuters have now been evacuated to a safer area. A temporary medical camp has also been established by the FWO to treat those who were injured in the incident. In Egypt, at least 20 people have been killed and 24 others injured after a fire broke out in a garment factory north of the capital, Cairo. Authorities say the fire erupted in a 4-story factory in Al Aboud city. The blaze was later extinguished after the effort of 10 fire brigades. Rescue teams shifted the victims to several nearby hospitals. "27 people have died after a bus carrying dozens of pilgrims plunged down a steep abyss on Indonesia's Java island. Authorities say the victims also include junior high school students. They said rescuers worked through the night using cranes to save 39 injured survivors from the wreckage. They said the bus carrying 66 passengers was traveling on a winding and poorly lit road when it plunged down the 20-meter ravine. It was returning from a religious pilgrimage site in the West Java. Ivory Coast Prime Minister Hamd Bakayoko has died of cancer in southwestern Germany. He was appointed Prime Minister in July last year following the sudden death of his predecessor Amadou Gon Coulibaly. Aside from his role as Prime Minister, Bakayoko was also the country's defense minister. He was flown to France in February for medical tests and was later transferred to Germany due to his deteriorating health. President Alassane Ouattara says he was a great statesman and a man of exemplary loyalty. Patrick Achi has been appointed as the interim Prime Minister, while Tene Birahima has been named interim Defense Minister. The Duke of Cambridge says the royals are not a racist family following accusations about the Duke and the Duchess of Sussex in a TV interview. Speaking in East London, Prince William said he has not yet spoken to his brother but will do so. This comes days after Meghan Markle alleged that one unnamed member of the family had asked how dark their son Archie's skin might be. Buckingham Palace previously said it was saddened to learn that a royal family member expressed concerns over the skin color of Meghan's unborn baby. In a statement, the palace said recollections may vary, but the matters will be addressed privately. Meghan's interview has divided the British public, with some calling it a self-serving assault, while others have called the monarchy outdated. The United Nations has denounced the deadly police operations in Venezuela. The UN investigators say they are looking into 200 killings allegedly committed by the country's police forces this year. UN fact-finding mission head Marta Velinas said preliminary investigations indicate that some of those killed were victims of extrajudicial executions. Velinas said authorities have failed to release death certificates even after charging fee for autopsies. Meanwhile, in a statement, Venezuela's foreign ministry rejected the accusations as false. Today marks the 10th anniversary of a massive earthquake and a tsunami that triggered triple nuclear meltdowns in Fukushima, Japan. Thousands lost their lives, while tens of thousands had to be evacuated in the aftermath. Years on, Fukushima residents recall the traumatic experience, but also speak about hope for the future. More in this report.
It was just after 2:45 on a cold Friday afternoon when buildings across northeast Japan began to shake fiercely as one of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded unleashed its fury. The March 11th, 2011 tremor triggered a catastrophic tsunami and nuclear disaster. Trucks and houses had been swept aside like children's toys. The earthquake caused meltdowns at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant and forced more than 160,000 residents to flee as radiation spewed into the air. With a moment of silence, prayers and anti-nuclear protests, Japan mourned the victims 10 years after.
We must never let the valuable lessons learned from the great sacrifices made in the disaster fade away. I once again pledge here that we will continue to review the disaster prevention and mitigation policies to protect the lives of the people, and that we will work in all areas to strengthen our nation and to make a country that is resilient to disasters.
Nevertheless, as the memories of the terrible incident gradually fade away, local residents are positive about the future ahead. Toshiharu Onoda, a 13th-generation potter living in a town close to the nuclear plant, were forced to flee when the massive earthquake struck. Now, with restrictions relaxed, the unique pottery has finally come back home, as Onoda is planning to open a new workshop in downtown Nemi.
I would like to pass a Borazoma Yaki, a tradition with a history of more than 300 years, to the next generations. It is my goal. I hope that it could be carried on by as many people as possible.
Meanwhile, famous singer Lady Gaga also sent her wishes to the people of Japan and praised them for their efforts. She said their conduct amid the Fukushima disaster is a source of hope for everyone during the testing times of the ongoing pandemic.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. And now the business updates. Wall Street stocks have climbed after the market's blue chip index trades in record territory. The markets have also been buoyed by a retreat in government bond yields. The Labor Department data showed that the U.S. weekly jobless claims dropped to 4-month low, boosting the investor sentiment. The shares of Tesla were up 4%, while the stocks of Apple, Amazon, Alphabet and Facebook also traded higher. All the major bourses gained steam. Meanwhile, the oil prices surged as vaccine rollouts bolstered the economic outlook. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now with the latest updates. You can follow us on social media at Indus Special.